Hello and welcome to episode 92 of PauseCast. It is September the 8th, 2018. I'm Jessica Alouette and I use she, her pronouns.
I'm Mark Hanna, I use he, him. Welcome.
Hey, Mark.
Hey, how you going?
Good, how are you going?
Pretty good, nice and warm today.
Yeah, it's been kind of refreshing lately.
Yeah, it was really cold like the last couple of days, but now I've had Gizmo lying in the sunlight near me all day again, so it's been nice.
Yeah. Even just like in general, it's definitely felt warmer. I haven't had to use the heater as often to like stay functional. My hands are staying warm of their own accord now.
That's good.
I occasionally have to take the hoodie off because it gets warm. It's amazing.
That's good. I'm actually wearing a sleeveless top at home at the moment, which doesn't happen often, so it's very nice and warm today.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't happen often. Oh my god, are you okay?
Yeah, it's because I was doing yard work earlier. But also, it's not cold enough for me to want to put more on.
You and your cold arms.
I'm just cold everywhere.
Welcome to our show about video games that we do every week. We, here on PauseCast, we pause and reflect on what we've been playing over the course of the week from a queer perspective. So, without further ado, Mark, do you want to tell me in brief what you have been playing this week?
Be very brief, because I've played one game. I've played more XCOM 2, War of the Chosen. That's all I've played since our last recording.
And I myself have played Far Cry 5, Wolfenstein 2, The New Colossus, which means a certain thing about Far Cry 5 if you have paid attention to previous episodes, and Destiny 2, Forsaken, the Destiny expansion that has just launched this week. I am going to be kicking off the discussion this week with I'll probably talk about a couple of things, and then we'll go to Mark, and then we'll come back to the Destiny expansion. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is Far Cry 5, which is going to be a very short discussion. Because the next time I booted it up, after all of the discussion that we had last week about how infuriating I found that game, I was going to go for another walk in the woods, just out in the middle of nowhere, in a region I had already liberated. So I knew that there was going to be no cultists off the track. Just going to go for a walk in the woods and, try and find a couple things a couple of the collectibles and stuff that had been missing out and see if they were down there.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever. Not a huge accomplishment in an open world game. Not a task that should be too painful.
But the game systems kind of showed their ass in a major way. It being an open world game, Far Cry 5 is very systems driven, and some of that system dictates like animal population and even some information population throughout the world. Like there'll be civilians that it spawns in, and it has like an indicator over their head saying, hey, this person has information about this type of event. Okay.
Follow me so far?
Yeah.
So, out in the middle of the woods, in the middle of fucking nowhere, 3 times in a row, the game spawned an individual with information on prepper stashes, which are stashes that you can find throughout the world and have a little platforming puzzle, and a wolverine attacking them. Three of the exact same situations with just the player model swapped out. They all had information on the exact same type of thing. They were all being attacked by the exact same animal. And that was how the systems felt it was smart to, generate. It
becomes really obvious when you get that repetition, doesn't it?
Yep.
Like I've noticed in other games that have ran events like these, like Red Dead Redemption has got them, Battletech has them between combat, and generally I've noticed repetition only between different playthroughs. Like if I play through the same game twice, I'll notice the same thing a couple of times, but I've never had things like that where you just get the same thing 3 times in a row. very, very egregiously.
Yeah, I mean, from what you've said about Far Cry 5, it sounds like it just generates these things at a really fast rate. Like, what was the time you had between...
5 minutes.
No, you were talking last week about the time between deadly encounters.
Yeah, the time between...
Like
I had to shoot a thing fatally. 10 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, that's ridiculous. So...
And I got 3 of the same event repetition within the span of 5 minutes. And it just, like... It was so transparent in what it was trying to do, I got fed up with it.
Yeah.
And so, like I said last week, I said that if I got really irritated with Far Cry 5, I would uninstall the game and play the most relentlessly political thing I could think of, which was Wolfenstein 2. And great news, everybody, I'm playing Wolfenstein 2.
Is it a lot better?
What a breath of fresh air.
Good.
Just what an utter breath of fresh air. It is so good to be playing Wolfenstein 2 again. A lot of what I've been playing to this point has been me catching up with my previous playthrough, which I reached a certain point, a level called Monster, for anybody who has played the game. And that was the point at which I had ended up stopping playing the game. Anybody who knows what immediately precedes Monster is going to be very, very angry by the fact that they're going to be angered by me saying that. Because, as it turns out, immediately after that level, the game goes some places and starts doing some things. I'm not going to talk about a lot of that stuff yet because I'm still working through a lot of the new stuff that it's opened up. There's a set of abilities that is opened up to me. For anybody who knows what this means, again, relatively spoiler-free, I chose option 3. So I have a cool new ability that's opened up some like Dishonored-style paths in the levels from this point forward. And I'm still working through that and still working through how the side mission structure works. Because now there are side missions in what has historically been a linear narrative first-person shooter. I'm not sure how I feel about them yet, but we will see.
How do they work? Having not played any Wolfenstein games, new ones or old ones, I've sort of categorized it in my head with Dishonored, but I don't know if that's entirely accurate. I know Dishonored has got like separate sequences with a full break in between them for each mission, as opposed to another linear game like in the Halo series where there wasn't always such a break like that, except sometimes, I guess. Actually, I don't even know if that's right. I haven't played a Halo game in so long. But when you go from one chapter or mission or whatever to the next in Wolfenstein, does it... are you in the same place and this is a cutscene, or it fully pulled you out of where you were and then you're going to start off somewhere else, time has passed, sort of thing?
It depends on the mission. Some of them... There's some that are like both of those options in equal measure. Sometimes there will be... You'll end the mission and you will wake up on your base, which is the Ava's Hammer. You'll have escaped by some means.
Oh, okay, so you have a base that you can go to between missions sometimes or something.
Yep, and it's populated with characters and stuff that you can... And side characters, just... who have names and you can talk to them. Even the New Order did this as well, where you still had a central base of operations that you would occasionally come back to, and you could see how the lives of everyone there were changing.
Right, that sounds quite similar to Dishonored in that respect then. And I'm guessing the side missions you start from that point then?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Because I was wondering how that would work in such a linear game, and I was wondering if I could guess it before you explained it.
In terms of relative level design, Wolfenstein 2 is a little bit like a Dishonored Light. There's not as much flexibility as what Dishonored offers in terms of power and stuff like that, and even in terms of navigation routes. But there is some different paths through. There is some light stealth mechanics. You don't have to go in guns blazing. And in fact, you're incentivized not to, because there are commanders that exist in certain parts of the level, and commanders can raise alarms, which will call for backup. So if you can take out the commanders before taking out the rest of the Nazis in that area, then you can just remove them from the equation by any means necessary, and no backup will come. Or you could stealth through the whole thing. That's up to you. The stealth mechanics aren't super well developed, but they're there.
This is reminding me a little bit now of Uncharted 4, and how it encourages you to stealth initially, but there aren't a whole heap of different paths through the level like in Dishonored.
Yeah. I think that it's very fair to describe it as a Dishonored Light. Once you get to that halfway point where I mentioned that you can get some additional powers, new navigation routes start opening up in the world.
Okay.
In levels both past and future, because there is stuff that is just accessible to you now by some means.
Ah, okay. I didn't know you could backtrack at all.
Yeah, the backtracking is part of those side missions. They repopulate areas that you went into with commanders that you can take out. I haven't fully explored that stuff. But it starts opening up all kinds of possibilities. It's really, really cool.
Nice.
Yeah. The brutality of the game is still like up to 10. Like the opening moments of Wolfenstein 2, even on a second playthrough, are still a lot to deal with. They are very, very intense and brutal. And as I've continued to go on, like, realizing how the abuses of the past are just ever present in the life of BJ Blazkowicz. They're a ghost that haunts him throughout the game. Even more present abuses are ghosts that haunt him. It even extends into some of the level design, into the antagonist of the game, Frau Engel, who was a side character, in fact, in the previous game, Wolfenstein: The New Order. She's a ghost from BJ's past that's haunting him all throughout the course of this game. And he's haunted by the past of his abusive father. And it's so much to deal with. BJ's had a shitty life. And here he is still doing his best. It's a very good game. It's very well written. It's got this. You've mentioned you haven't played any of these games so far.
Yeah, that's right.
For all that you know about BJ Blazkowicz, you might think upon looking at him like, oh, he's just, a gruff muscle man. He's a first-person shooter everyman, Yeah,
it's a reasonable sort of first-level approximation when you see a new first-person shooter game, right?
Yeah, basically. Like, you assume if your character is a guy, they're just a gruff muscle man, and that is their personality. Which is, like, Wolfenstein has very gracefully subverted. And
good.
In a way, I'm still really, really appreciative of. Like, Wolfenstein, Old Blood, New Order, and New Colossus all have BJ Blazkowicz in. He's got this soft-spoken, very poetic sense of speaking, just in general.
Mm-hmm.
He knows when to be a man of action, and that's when you get a little bit of that gruff muscle man kind of personality coming out. But he also knows when he knows when to be introspective and when to reflect, and he has this poetic way of going about it. Like, I could read you some of the quotes that are just in the opening sections of this game.
Yeah, go for it.
Death at the gates again, howling my name. Come on in, old buddy. Sorry I made you wait. Mother, am I acquitted? Was I righteous and just, good enough to witness the awe of heaven? it's just it's very poetic stuff. Even in those two quotes come from a moment in which BJ is critically wounded at the beginning of the game, which is the end of the New Order.
The New Order being the previous game.
Yeah,
right?
the New Order being the previous game. He's critically wounded at the end of that, and in the beginning, where these quotes come from, he is still critically injured and being ushered back to the base.
Sounds certainly a lot more introspective than something you'd see in God of War or Call of Duty.
Yeah, absolutely. There's virtually no time for introspection in a Call of Duty. There's a little bit in Infinite Warfare, which I've talked about in the past, which is interesting. There's reflections on people that have been lost along the way. There is actual moments of humanity in that game because the writing in that game is just stellar. It's wild, but it's very atypical of the series. God of War, I don't know. I feel like the 2018 version might be a little bit more introspective. Am I wrong in saying that?
No. The most recent God of War definitely was heading in that direction, but they still had all the baggage of Kratos being a muscly brute that they were trying to not completely erase, I guess. So no, they definitely improved from what I understand the previous games were like, but not nearly to the extent you're describing from Wolfenstein.
Gotcha. All right. That's all the thoughts I have on Wolfenstein 2 at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still working my way through that game.
So you say you think you've hit past the halfway point?
I know I've hit past the halfway point.
Okay.
There is, in between levels and in between deaths, the way that it indicates your progress is there is like a bar with an image inside of it, basically, showing a little bit of the current level that you're on.
Mm-hmm.
And it progresses all the way across the screen by the time that you have finished the game. So it starts on the left side and moves to the right.
Oh, so you can see
I can see visually, I'm at the halfway point. It's a neat design touch.
It's interesting. I've seen games before who'll have a completion percentage, but I often don't know if they're talking about the story or all the collectibles and everything, so I might be over or underestimating how far through I am based on that.
Gotcha.
And it can always be disappointing when you think, oh, there's still so much more of the game left, but actually no, you're near the end of the story and you just haven't done all the side content.
Gotcha. Yeah. All right. Do you want to talk about your game, XCOM 2?
Yeah, so I've been playing a bunch more of that, so I progressed further. I don't want to say in the story because it's not really how the game works, but in the difficulty progression, I guess.
Right.
I picked one of the difficulty options at the beginning to slow way down the sort of doomsday counter it has, so it's not really an end condition anymore, but still difficulty ramps up and up and up. So I've gotten to just hit the final armor tier, and I'm nearly at the final weapon tier. But again, I've been unable to help myself in comparing it with Battletech, and one of the things that I've really noticed now that my soldiers are getting to the higher levels is just how much more distinct they feel in their skill sets. So I've described the skill mechanics in Battletech before. Basically, there's four, I don't want to call them trees, there's 4 bars, 4 skills that you can put points in as you get experience in Battletech, and each of them has 2 thresholds. Once you hit the first threshold of 2 skills, of each of those skills, you get a actual skill that's more than just increased attributes. And once you hit the second threshold on one of those where you hit the first one, you get another skill. So effectively, there's only 12 possible combinations of skills in that game. So there's sort of 12 classes. And particularly in the late game where you might have a bunch of mech warriors who all have a full 10 points in each of those skills, they stop feeling that distinct. They just feel like, oh, this is my striker, or this is my flanker, and that's it. They're defined only by, oh, they're this one of the 12 possible combinations of skills. The game gives names to them once you have someone with that combination. Whereas in XCOM and XCOM 2, there's 4 classes, but within those classes there's a lot more skill choices. So there's a lot more variation you can end up with. And it's really starting to show, because I've got 3 or 4 people with the same class who feel very different, whereas if I had 3 or 4 people in Battletech, if they were all the same class, combat would feel very samey.
Right.
Of course, it helps a lot as well that you actually see the people in XCOM 2 and can customize them a lot. I feel like I spend as long customizing before a mission as I do in the mission sometimes, especially if it's someone I haven't used before and I want to make sure they look cool first. Whereas in Battletech, you don't actually see anything but the portraits for the characters you've created. I think they just are portraits, really. Portraits and a couple of skills, instead of, 3D models of them, because you're watching the giant robot instead, which makes sense. But one thing that XCOM does to sort of step this up in War of the Chosen is, as each character levels up, normally you would have a choice between 2 skills at each level. And with War of the Chosen, each character also has 4 hidden skills that they get able to be unlocked that are pulled from different classes. And you don't know what these are until you hit the level threshold to see them. And you have to spend a bunch of points to get them instead of the normal unlocking method. And it's interesting in how it makes the characters feel more distinct, because they're not only you're choosing different skills, but they're not all the same skills aren't available in the same character. Because it also, alongside this, it lets you expend those points you can get, which you couldn't get outside the expansion, in order to learn both skill point options at the same level. So if what's an example? I'm trying to think of 2 that are at the same level. I think one of the sharpshooter ones early on is you can either get Overwatch shots, which are like reactions to enemies moving from further than the normal range of your weapon, or you can get if you shoot with your pistol first thing that turn, doesn't end the turn. I think you normally have to pick one or the other of those. But now, if you spend points as well, you can get both of them on the same character. So if you bunch all your points onto one character, you could, if you have enough, just get all of the skills available to them. At which point you kind of end up at the same place as Battletech, or you would, where one ranger with all the skills is the same as another ranger with all the skills, except these additional skills that only this character can get in this class still make them feel distinct. So I think XCOM 2 has done really, really well at this. They also
makes it possible for you to tell a story with a character.
It does.
And have them have a more personal history, I guess.
They have a very different feel, and it's like, this is my sharpshooter, but this is the only sharpshooter I have who can do this. Or it's like, hey, this is my I can't remember the names of all the classes. The one that shoots grenades. But they're the one that if they are high up, then they can shoot a couple of people in the same turn if they manage to kill the first one. Because they've got this special skill that normally is only available to sharpshooters. So it's really neat. They also let you respec characters, because one thing you notice is you'll unlock a hidden skill and then realize, oh wow, that will work really well with this earlier skill that I didn't get. So you can spend some time to undo all of the level-based skills you picked and then pick them again. Although I've found that I've ended up just for the first few levels not picking the skills yet, which has been kind of interesting. It makes the early game harder because I'm essentially still playing with people at a lower rank. But I just don't want to pick one thing and then find out, oh, if only I'd picked this other thing, it'd be really useful, and then I have to spend a bunch of time waiting for them to respec before I can get that combination. Because some of them are really, really nice to have together. I'm just getting to the point where I'm starting to see most of the hidden skills for each of my soldiers and sort of mapping out where I want them to end up. and a couple of them are having to change pretty drastically. So I have to plan where I want to go and how I need to get there by, do I respec or do I spend the extra points in order to get the skill that I didn't choose without spending the time to respec, anything like that. But it's made me think about how characters in games where you get to pick a bunch of skills can often feel defined as much by the skills they didn't pick as by the ones they did, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting comparing it with single-player games where often you can just get all the skills. Like Horizon Zero Dawn is one where I have got all the skills in my playthrough of that. And it didn't feel wrong. It felt like that was the natural progression for the character as she grew in strength and experience. But then there's other single-player games where I haven't wanted some of the skills just because there are various annoying things they can do. And the main games I'm thinking of with that are Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War. There's one skill in Shadow of Mordor where if you get it, then it lets you move more quickly through the world, but it also means that a big spacebar prompt appears in the middle of the screen a lot, and it's a real pain in the ass. There's some others that just change the way some of your skills look, so they look a lot more magic, when I'm thinking, actually, I liked just fighting with a sword, and I don't want this magic stuff. I remember being really annoyed when I was playing the Shadow of Mordor expansions, and they just give you all the skills, or a lot of the skills to start with, because it's like a different instance from your main save. And it gave me a bunch of the ones that I had specifically avoided getting. And it was quite a strange feeling. Sorry, stretching.
Oh, good.
Watching Gizmo makes it really hard not to stretch sometimes. But yeah, another thing that I've noticed, comparing XCOM with Battletech again, because it's what's been on my mind, is how they treat time really differently. So in Battletech, every month that passes, you pay upkeep costs and you pay your mech warriors. So there's this constant countdown until the next month, and that's when your resources get taken away, and then you spend the next month doing missions to get your money back, which you'll then pay on upkeep and getting better stuff. And as time passes, that lets you repair and refit your mechs, and it lets your people heal if they've been injured. And so time passing is mostly a good thing because it lets you repair, and you have to have it happen. And then the progression isn't tied to time, it's tied to the campaign. So you can just, if you can get in a loop where you're not spending more than you're earning, you can just build up a buffer and then not have to worry about it for a while. And in XCOM, time is a very different sort of resource, because every time you spend it, as time progresses, you know that the enemy is getting stronger.
Yeah.
And I've talked so much about how I hate this part of XCOM, I wish I could turn it off. I understand why they've done it. They just, that feeling of always having to push forward, you can't just stop and rest on your laurels, I guess, in the way you can in Battletech. They always want you to have fires to put out and stuff, and I wish I could turn it off. It's why I slowed down the Doomsday counter, so I had one less thing to worry about, but there's no option to just slow down the game heaps. So time, you also spend time getting yourself stronger because you're constantly researching one thing or another. You never stop having a current research project. So if enough time passes, you will research all the things. So it makes sense for the enemy to also be getting stronger as time passes. But it means every time someone's tired or injured and you have to wait, you just know that's happening as well. It's a very different feeling. And there's also sort of the inverse of Battletech, in that at the end of the month in Battletech, all your money is taken away. But in XCOM, you get all your money at the end of the month and then have to spend some time collecting it. It's weirdly different. I think I definitely prefer Battletech's more chilled way of managing time. I kind of wish I could just freeze XCOM at a certain difficulty and just play the tactical game forever. I know from my previous playthrough that once you finish not finish the game exactly. Once you've finished all of the bosses, essentially, there are sort of 6 bosses in the game, 3 from War of the Chosen and 3 from Alien Hunters. Then that threat is gone, but you also have the bonus from beating them. And once the game hits its peak difficulty, it doesn't keep escalating because there's nowhere else for it to go. But by that point, you've got enough resources where it's much less of a challenge. So I kind of wish I could just freeze it a bit earlier than that and just play the tactics game for as long as I want. But sadly, no option. But I mean, I'm enjoying playing through it so far. I've got someone up to the 2nd highest rank currently, whereas most of my soldiers are a few down below that still. But it's good. Like I said, I'm almost on the final weapons tier, so I'm almost at the point where my own strength is going to plateau quite a lot while the enemies are still getting stronger, so...
Yeah.
I haven't yet seen the most difficult enemies, so that's always something to look forward to. I still remember my previous playthrough from like a year ago when I first saw the giant robot enemy. I think it's called the Sectopod. That was difficult. I remember I had to blow a hole in the floor of an apartment building to shoot it through the hole so I didn't expose myself too much to everything else.
Do you think that XCOM 2 is maybe designed, I guess, more for like the perfect run over time? And it wants you to be making that constant progress because it wants to push you towards making the perfect run because it has a fixed end goal. I don't know, does Battletech feel like it has that end goal in the same way?
Battletech, you kind of know from the start that you'll be able to keep playing after the end of the campaign. The whole idea is you're a mercenary and you've been hired by the person who's behind this campaign. And after that, you're still going to be a mercenary.
Where XCOM 2 has this fixed goal.
Yeah, XCOM 2 never feels like it's going to have continued play post-game. The whole idea is, hey, beat all the aliens and kick them off the planet. So they're not going to be there to fight after that, is the idea.
So it kind of is leading into that philosophy of it wants you to have the perfect run. It wants you to kill all the aliens, do the best you can, and like finish the run. It is pushing you towards an end goal. So it kind of makes sense that Battletech has this more chilled approach because the design philosophy behind the two games is very, very different.
Absolutely.
Because the narrative demands there are both very, very different. Like, what is the name of the organization in XCOM? Is it just XCOM?
Yeah, you are
XCOM.
of XCOM.
Yeah. The end goal of XCOM is to eliminate all aliens. When you have eliminated the aliens, then that is the fixed point. It's not a mercenary company. If there's no aliens, there's not necessarily a need to be fighting aliens.
Yeah.
Where Battletech, someone's always got a contract.
Exactly, and you spend a lot of the time during the campaign fighting other people's fights that aren't related to the campaign because you have to do that before the next campaign mission becomes available. So you become accustomed to this. Yes, I will do contracts for a lot of different people.
I like that idea a heck of a lot.
Yeah,
the idea of contracting missions in games. Very few games that I've played have that kind of system.
If I remember correctly from what I've read, the original XCOM series, one of the later games had there were a bunch of super powerful corporation factions that I think you had to appease, and I don't know if you did contracts for them or how it worked, but I think it might have actually been leaning a little more towards that. I don't know if they're going to take this XCOM series in the exact same direction or not. If people don't mind spoilers for the end of XCOM 2, it looks like the next game is probably going to parallel the second original XCOM, which was Terror from the Deep, because at the end of XCOM 2 you find out, oh wait a minute, this super old alien base I'm in is under the ocean on Earth, so they've been here a while.
Okay.
Oh, what was the other thing I was going to say? Right, yeah. It feels a lot more sort of puzzle-like in its combat as well than Battletech, and I think that's because of how Battletech has different health pools for different parts of the same mech. In XCOM, if I'm shooting something with 8 health and I deal 6 damage to it and then I deal 2 damage to it, it dies. Whereas in Battletech, I might hit the leg instead of the arm, so I don't destroy the arm or something like that. So there's a lot of... you have to be more wary of that stuff, whereas in XCOM it's a missed shot is what you have to be aware of. In Battletech it's a missed shot, or you're just not hitting the right part of it. It's sort of more complex to beat individual things in that as well. So XCOM feels a lot more like a puzzle where things fit in place. I mean, I suppose it's even echoed in the way movement is done, because in XCOM it's all grid-based, whereas in Battletech you just see dots laid out in a pattern that is not entirely clear. I don't know if they've got like an invisible hex grid or something like that. But it feels a lot more... a lot less discreet, I suppose.
Hmm.
But yeah, there's definitely a very different feel to both those games. I still wish I could find something that has a little more of a mashup, but one day there'll be the perfect tactics game, and then we can stop.
And then video games will finally be over.
It'll finally be over. This horror.
We can finally end video together. We can end video games. God, sometimes I wish.
Speaking of endings, do you want to get on to Destiny 2?
Yes. Oh, I'd like to stop stretching first. Yes, I would love to get on to Destiny 2 Forsaken, the expansion that has just launched for Destiny 2. Destiny's back! It's good again, actually, also.
That's good? Good is good?
Yep, good is good. There's a lot of stuff that has... a lot of stuff that's changed over the course of... for the course of the launch. There was some stuff that launched the previous week, just as a pre-patch. They've previewed a few of the changes, and now they're finally here. We have some visibility on the new stuff that is happening in the game, and it's pretty cool. The new story is pretty cool. I feel like the new story is kind of everything I really wanted out of this expansion.
Yeah.
It promised a darker turn to the story, and sure enough, it delivered. And it feels like it's kind of like you know the Marvel Cinematic Universe, right?
Yeah.
It feels like it's kind of the Infinity War of the Destiny universe.
I know the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but I haven't seen Infinity War.
So not in terms of crossover, but in terms of just like Infinity War seems like it has this tonal darkness to it.
Okay.
That it makes it distinct from the rest of the Destiny universe. The Destiny universe has had lingering tones of darkness, but it's never really been the primary tone. Forsaken takes the narrative and does actually spin it in a darker, revenge-driven direction. As it turns out, I'm a sucker for revenge tales, as I've come to realize this. Very recently, in fact, just like looking at my taste in games and just thinking about like, oh, you know, I like a lot of these games with this one persistent theme. Like, I like Dishonored. I like Mafia. I like a lot of revenge stories. As it turns out, something about them just works for me. I know it doesn't work for everyone, and it can certainly reach a point in certain games where it feels a bit contrived, but I like a good revenge story, and I think Forsaken delivers on that.
Who are you taking revenge on? Did the triangles show up?
The triangles are still unknown. I haven't figured out what the triangles are. Yeah. I think that might actually be next year.
Okay.
They might have previewed essentially the entire path of Destiny 2 in the ending of Destiny 2. Because every location that it hit, so at the end of Destiny 2, I feel okay talking about this, it's been a year. If you haven't played it, spoilers ahead. It's not a huge deal for the main campaign, in my opinion, but your mileage may vary. At the end of Destiny 2, there's a huge explosion of light that emanates from the Traveler, the central big floaty magic orb in the sky. And the light touches 4 locations, and 3 of them have been where expansions have been set. The first that we see it touches Mercury, which is where the first expansion, Curse of Osiris, took place. The second location we see it touch is Mars, which is where the expansion Warmind took place. And now the third expansion has come out, which takes place in a place called the Reef, specifically the Forsaken Shore. This is a location that's deep out in space in the asteroid belts. So it's very far out. It's at the farthest reaches of our solar system.
The asteroid belt isn't the farthest reaches of our solar system.
Well, okay, the Reef is in the farthest reaches of the solar system.
It's in the Oort cloud or something.
Pardon?
Is it in the Oort cloud or something?
The Oort cloud? I've never even heard of this.
Okay. OORT, you can Google it afterwards.
OORT?
Yeah. It's sort of where comets come from, I think, if I remember right.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it might be out there, actually. Yeah. You know what? It might be out there in the Oort cloud.
Because that's definitely very far out.
Yeah. But then the fourth location that the light touches is those triangle things. Which I think will be next year's expansion.
Okay, so next year we can finally learn whether circles or triangles are stronger.
Yeah, next year we will finally learn whether the orbs or the triangles will win.
I reckon circles.
I think the orbs are going to win.
I mean, it's because we're on their side, so... Player tends to win.
Yeah, it's weird how the player tends to win. I think it's also kind of in the camp of Infinity War because it plays around with some of the moral ambiguity around space superheroes. There are points in which your morality and actions are called into question for the first time in the Destiny universe.
Do you have real choice, though?
You don't have real choice, but it's still enough to, it's enough to ponder.
Okay.
But it's not enough to say, oh, you have a real choice in this matter. Your guardian may take a darker turn than you want. But it's happening. Ultimately, I still come down on the side of really enjoying it. There's substantial new stuff. There's great new environments, including the secret endgame environment, which I will not talk about in depth.
Is it in space?
It is in space. There are secret cats. I do not know what the secret cats do, but there are secret cats.
Okay.
The cats have secrets, and they tell me right now that I lack something. So I need to find an item to give to the secret cats. I don't know what the secret cat will do after that, but I do know that there is a secret cat.
Okay. Is it, what's his name? Mike?
It is not Mike, the liar. And
that would be fun.
That would be fun. A little Skyrim reference.
Well, not just Skyrim. He's been in every Elder Scrolls game.
Yeah. A little Elder Scrolls reference. There is some nice touches for Destiny 1 veterans, even people who played Destiny 1 a lot more casually, like I did. And even Destiny 2, I still play very, very casually. But there are locations and stuff that are returning from that game. There is characters, even, that return in some form. There's a location called the Prison of Elders, which you can go visit again as part of one of the new strikes. And it's also the starting point for the new expansion. So, if you played Destiny 1 and you remember the Prison of Elders, good news, you can go back.
Well, good news if you liked it. If you didn't like that level, then sorry.
Yeah, that's unfortunate if you didn't like it. It was an endgame activity in Destiny 1 as well.
Okay.
The Prison of Elders in Destiny 1 was like a wave-based survival mode of sorts. And you had to survive 3 rounds in the prison, and then you would get a reward. And they have one of those again. It's really, really great. It's part of one of the strikes.
Neat.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I have been having a lot of fun with Forsaken. I really enjoyed the story. I really enjoyed some of the implications of a lot of the story stuff that has come up and the new location that's come up. Me and Ash are kind of looking into some of the more lore heavy aspects and doing some research around like, oh, what is the raid boss going to be? Because we've seen some signs of what the raid boss might be. We have some theories. It's going to be very interesting if what we think is correct is in fact correct. There may be, without saying too much, there may be a giant space dragon to fight in the raid. This being a science fantasy game, that feels right at home.
Yeah, that sounds right.
I wish there were more science fantasy games. Like, I desperately, desperately want more stuff like this. This works so well, and it resonates with me in a way that traditional fantasy doesn't.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Destiny has stumbled onto some magic. It works. It's beautiful.
Just a quick thought on science fantasy. I know Shadowrun is kind of science fiction fantasy. It will have a very different feel to Destiny, though.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to think if there's anything else in the same sort of genre mashup.
It's really hard.
Yeah.
There is very little. I think like Planescape and Torment Tides of Numenera both are going to be within that same genre, but again, same narrative genre, but very different actual gameplay genre.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
There's not a lot of variation in first-person shooters. Disappointingly enough, It tends to be either like Destiny or stuff that is set on Earth primarily, and usually in a military sort of setting. So, just a bummer. Destiny is unique and special, and I hope that it continues to be good. I hope that I continue to like the endgame stuff in this expansion, but it seems like it's going to be a really good time.
Nice.
Yeah. All right. I think that's going to do it for this 90-second episode of PauseCast. Thank you so much for listening. Before we completely wrap up, Mark, what are you looking forward to playing this week?
I know I'm going to play more XCOM 2, but I'm not sure what, if anything else, I'll be playing. I was actually eyeing up that game I mentioned a couple of weeks ago. Oh, what was its name? Far Lone Sales. And I'm annoyed I missed it was on sale earlier, and I missed picking it up while it was on sale, and now I'm regretting it. So
you're looking forward to maybe looking into Far Lone Sales?
Yeah.
Sweet.
But yeah, I'm definitely going to play more XCOM 2.
As for myself, I am looking forward to playing first I'm going to try out the Battlefield 5 open beta.
All right.
Yep. I have enjoyed the Battlefield games in the past. I played it a little bit last night and had a good time, so I'm going to check it out in a little bit more depth in the coming days. I think that'll be pretty interesting. And I also intend to check out more Destiny and more Wolfenstein.
Nice.
Thank you for listening to this episode of PauseCast. If you like what you heard, we have a few ways that you could support us. First, you can contribute a rating or review on iTunes, Spotify, or your platform of choice. Just doing that helps us out a lot. You can also contribute to the show directly by emailing us, pausecastshow@gmail.com, and we will read your emails and answer your questions. So feel free to send them in. We really appreciate all of that. If you're interested, you can also support us financially. If you'd like, you can also support us financially, and we have a couple of ways you can do that as well. The first is by supporting us through Ko-fi with a one-time donation. You can do this by going to bit.ly/pausecoffee. Or, if you'd like to support us month to month, please contribute to our Patreon. You can find us at patreon.com/PauseCastShow, and every little bit helps pay for our various costs that come up related to the show. Thank you to all of our current patrons. Mary, Moth, Para, Sammy, Dove, Gray, Ash, and Corybat.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your continued support of the show. It really means a lot. Thank you as well to Leon for the use of our theme song, Honey Milk Island. You can find Leon's music and download some of it for free at soundcloud.com/LEYAWN. Mark.
Yeah.
Where can people find you online?
I'm on Twitter at HonestUniverse, and I write a blog, though not about video games, at honestuniverse.com. And I'll plug the same thing as last week. So a few weeks ago now, I published a transparency, researchy, investigation-y thing that I've been working on for a few months. You can find that if you go to bit.ly/OYA delays.
Excellent. And you can find me online at bird.school, and you can find me streaming on Mixer at mixer.com/TLQT, which is TIELQT. You can also now, breaking news, this is a breaking news update for everyone here. We are going to be moving the show, as part of my transition away from Twitch, we're going to be moving the show to its own dedicated home on Mixer. And you can find that and follow it at mixer.com/PauseCast. All right, and that is going to do it for this episode. Again, thank you so much for listening. We really, really appreciate it. And until next week, see you then.